Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are discussing trouble in the classroom, designers gone wild, attending trade shows, and a look back at the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, all on Light Talk.
And this is David in Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Still season 3.
Welcome to episode 122. So we're going to start off our show today with a couple of things, a couple of announcements. First of all, we'd like to thank Ann again for joining us last week. It was great to get her comments about the Ken Billington interview. And we are announcing new numbers.
Numbers.
When I get really bored, I actually look at who's listening to us. And I don't know what it is. I just want to make sure that people are still listening.
It's your low self-esteem issue.
I have very low self-esteem. That's correct. Anyone who listens to the show realizes that. Anyway, we have over 110,000 downloads, which is pretty cool.
Wow. That's a lot of people downloading a lot of data.
Yep. We are up to 115 countries.
No way.
I think the last time we counted, we were at 105. But we would like to welcome new countries. Okay, now I'm going to probably butcher the names.
You want a drum roll for this? Do you need a drum roll?
No. We have a few new countries. Well, how do you pronounce that first one?
No, that's the Seychelles. I know how to say that.
Oh, the
one.
Seychelles. Thank you so much,
Seychelles,
Sam.
but the other one looks difficult.
Well, are the Seychelles an island?
Yes, they're islands just east. They are eastern edge of the Caribbean Sea.
Okay, thank you, Stan.
Yes.
We have Malta. We have Brunei, Darussalam, right?
What is Darussalam?
Darussalam. It's Brunei, Darussalam. It's all part. It's the same country, by the way.
Wow.
We have Bosnia, Herzegovina.
Nice.
We know that. Bosnia, Bonaire.
Where's that?
Well, you are the geographical expert.
I don't know everything. I don't know everything.
Okay. God. We're going to be losing these countries, I predict, right now. They're going to say, they don't even know where the hell we live.
I've got to look at, David, when you're bored, you should look these places up so you can tell us where they are.
I know. I did this at the last second.
It'll make them feel good if we know where they are, too.
Let me name the last 3 countries. We have St. Eustatius, right? Sabah, and Zimbabwe.
Wow.
So there you go. Welcome to all of our
do.
new listeners in these wonderful countries.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you with us. We also have more exciting news. Our friends at Live Design Magazine have decided to distribute our podcast. So yes, you can find us there now. Check us out at livedesignonline.com. And finally, this week, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Woodstock. That's right, in August of 1969. By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. Okay, anniversary of Woodstock.
Gaskus Farm.
So we're going to talk about this more in our Let's Talk About segment, and there'll be no brown acid served. So enough of that. Let's get on with the show. Steve has our first listener question.
Yes, we have Rachel Bitter in Oregon, and she writes, why bother attending trade shows and conventions? They are just one big commercial.
We have to start on a big downer like this? I mean, really.
It's the dog days of summer.
Okay. Go.
Well, Rachel, you're right. They are one big damn commercial.
It's true. There's nothing wrong with that.
But they're also something else. They are a place for you to begin networking.
Right.
You're going to bump into a lot of people, USITT, the NAB, LDI, SETC, you pick it. Those conventions and trade shows are for you to meet people and be seen and give your resume. They're also places for you to hear new ideas.
Yeah.
Things that you might not know. Mm-hmm. You're going to see demos that you might not have normally seen wherever you're located in Oregon. Mostly it's a place for listening and observing. So yes, and Stan did say it, commercials aren't bad. This is what you do for a living. So I think staying up with technology, meeting people in the field, seeing new companies, new ideas, I think trade shows and conventions are really important. You might pace yourself. You might decide you're going to go to 3 trade shows or conventions and you're going to alternate year to year because money is difficult. But absolutely, do not abandon a trade show or a convention. And if you come to LDI, David will give you some swag.
That's coming. You know, can I encapsulate what Steve is saying so beautifully? I think of it this way: as a teacher, that's a classroom too. There's a lot of learning that you can do there that I can't just bring to you in the classroom. And even when I go to LDI or whatever, I come back and my students who couldn't go, I do a debriefing on what's new, what did I see. It's incredibly educational. And I remember the days when I was bringing students to LDI in the early 90s and people said, what are these kids doing here? And it was like an adult show. It seemed odd. And I'm like, these kids are going to be your customers one day. So why shouldn't I introduce them? And don't you want to meet them? And I think that has now actually taken hold, but it took a long time. But at first it was like, why are you bringing these children to this adult show? And I'm like, well, people grow up, you know. But I do think it's very educational on so many levels. Whether you take the classes, meet somebody at a trade booth, network, it's so enriching. It's a form of enrichment.
Yeah, and you keep learning. I mean, I learned something. I'm an old guy, right? Well, the three of us are sort of on our declining years, right?
I can see the other side from here.
You can see the other side.
I got more days behind me than I do in front of me.
Don't walk into the light stand, whatever you do. But seriously, we've all been around. And just speaking for myself, I learn something new every time I go. It's a wonderful experience. I can't improve on what Steve and Stan have said. It really is networking. And we're going to talk about that in our next question. But networking is so important. Anonymous in America asks, are we failing in the classroom? If so, what do we need to do? First of all, I'm just going to say something that got me in a lot of trouble back at the USITT conference in, I believe it was 1991 or 92.
Do I need to read the disclaimer now?
No, just wait around for the disclaimer. As long as it's in the show, we're okay. Okay. First of all, I believe there's still too many graduate programs. I really do. You know, I look at the number of designers coming out and graduating from grad programs, and I don't think the industry can support everyone. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. Also understand what you're going to learn. Well, you will not only learn it in the classroom, it is in the profession as well. I think that we fail students by not giving them pathways into the profession. That has to do with internships. That has to do, obviously, with networking, that sort of thing. You have to learn the profession. There has to be some connection to the profession, which is why I believe that unless your teacher has real strong connections to the profession or through internships, I know like Stan has an internship with the Oslo, right?
Yes, sir.
That you really need to stay close to a major city because there's a lot of opportunity in larger cities. So pathways in the profession. Also, not training students in state-of-the-art technology. And this is a part that can be very expensive for universities, especially for state universities that are on tight budgets because of the national trend, unfortunately, of devaluing the humanities. It's really hard to convince your university to buy the latest equipment. Now, Steve is in a great university, they have a lot of money, so he can keep up with a lot of this. And
they're rolling in it down there.
No, it's a blessing. It really is. Because if he wants a light, he can just buy it or, convince someone to bring in it. But you can have a great system. How many automated lights do you have now, Steve?
Let me just say something here. What I have is a really good department chair, and I have a really good dean who understands the importance of that. And yes, we do have some funding here, but without that support from administration, I'd be dead in the water.
Absolutely.
And to answer your question, we're I don't know 125. Maybe?
That's a lot of lights, right? And
that's a lot of moving
lights. And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of controllers. Yeah. It's terrific. There are schools out there. You're right. You need to support the dean and chair, but if you don't have the money, it doesn't matter what support you have. So that's really, really important. So that's how we fail students in lighting, is if we can't give them the equipment or at least, send them somewhere that they have access to the equipment. Finally, as a student, you have to have curiosity. You have to have ambition, a competitive nature. If you have that, you're going to be way ahead. But if you don't, none of these things will matter. You can be bathing in moving lights, right? You could be in New York, but if you're not curious, you're not going to make it. And I think it's really important that as a student, you take responsibility in your education, right? Contact designers who are visiting your town, right? Ask them if you could shadow them. Take control of your life. Go to trade shows. Go to receptions to meet people. Go to theater parties. Go to after rehearsal get-togethers. Be social. Know when to talk and when not to talk. So that's basically how we are failing the students by not giving them these opportunities. What do you think, Stan?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to the words in the question, and I highlighted a couple. This is where are we failing in the classroom? So I think I guess the finger is being pointed at us, those of us who teach, and then the place is the classroom, assuming that the teacher is competent. And if they've made it and they've been there for a while, that's going to give them the benefit of the doubt wherever they are, whether they're in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or whether they're in New York City or LA, they're still they're in that classroom. The failing part is usually not on the part of the teacher. Okay, usually the student, I just had a conversation with a faculty member, 40 years, very successful, world-renowned, and we were discussing this, and he said all the students, they get an A on the first day, and they either maintain the A or it decays. I just give them what they earn, and I set out very specific criteria. The way I think about the classroom is sort of preparation for particularly graduate school or even undergrads. This is the opportunity to build the assets you're going to need for your business. Because in our profession, we're all little businesses, right? Unless we go to work for a firm or a resident theater, you are a business. And so these things that you're developing are not just to get the grade. You have the opportunity over a course of years to develop the foundation of your business. And in fact, this colleague was telling me that the work that he did when he was a graduate student, this is in acoustics, he still uses the same spreadsheet and the same formulas and the same work processes and templates for reports that he developed as a graduate student. And this guy is running a business with 15 people employed. And so it's an opportunity to sort of create that life for yourself when you're in school. So if there's anything that's failing, it's the level of engagement, right? But the faculty member should do all the things that David has said. I'm not discounting any of that. So what we need to do is to just stay current, right, as best we can. And I don't necessarily agree with David completely that you have to be in a particular location. The school can bring in guests that help the network. So if you're in the middle, this is one of the weaknesses that we're getting better at my particular institution. We need to bring people into our school to use the wonderful resources that the school can provide so that students and faculty can meet people who are working professionally and do that synergy. I know it happens at UNLV. I know it happens down by Steve, and I know you guys do it in LA, but the schools that are a little bit more isolated, hopefully, if the administration is supportive, as Steve said, that's one way to sort of bridge that weakness. I mean, if I remember correctly, David, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you like to invoke Gil Helmsley a lot. Gil Helmsley worked in Madison, Wisconsin, which wasn't necessarily the great theater mecca of America, but he built this fantastic program, and yet he was able to maintain a prolific career in the city. So I don't know if that's necessarily a cut and dry situation.
Well, I'm leaning toward David here. I think the number one place we're failing in the classroom is we're out of touch. We're behind in technology. We're telling people about things that happened 10 or 15 years ago. I think that's really difficult. I think staying current and being aware of the trends and the changes in theater in this country. And through that, I think what we fail in is the advice we give students. You can be a really good designer and be a terrible teacher. You can be a really good designer, and the advice that you're giving your students worked for you, but doesn't work for them. I just saw a portfolio, and it was really interesting. The young man showed me his work, and it was completely unfiltered. There was no curation to it. So he pulled open, a show, and there were 100 photographs from the show, in and out of focus, good and bad. And I said, that's kind of odd. Which ones do you like? And he said, well, my teacher told me that's not important. My teacher said
silly.
Teacher said what's important is that I show a body of work and I respond to the interviewer and I let the interviewer make choices. What he or she likes, I might not like. And he was very sincere in this, and I'm sure his teacher was very sincere in that. But what was missing in that advice was that an interview may be 15 or 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, and you don't have time to curate someone's portfolio. I mean, his resume was the same thing. It was everything he had done since he was born,
Right.
including theater, including working at McDonald's, including, it was everything. It was just a snapshot of his whole existence, and it was overwhelming. So the interview was kind of a waste of time because we really couldn't get to anything specific because there was so much. I think it was an 11-page resume. There was so much to wade through to try to get there. So I do think there are a couple of different types of schools out there. I think there are schools that are consistently producing good work and have track records. I think there's schools that are emerging. And I would say when you bring up University of Wisconsin at Madison, I think what Hemsley did was he made it a center for theater. And he also had the advantage of the Guthrie Theater. So there's a lot. He built something, and it became a mecca to go to. I think there's also the schools out there where they are struggling, and they don't have the funding, they don't have the resources, but they want a theater program. And there is Doc, and Doc is teaching theater history and the acting classes and directing a show, and there's, Dr. Bob or Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah is a costume designer, and Dr. Bob is doing scenery and lighting and building the show, and it's a 3 or 4 person department. I don't know. I know I'll get a lot of guff on this. I don't know that they're the right school for everybody. So what I notice sometimes with students is they haven't done their homework either, and so they don't know what school they're talking to. Sometimes I'll talk to a student and they'll say, I'm going to go to school XYZ. And I said, oh, really? Why did you pick that school? Oh, it's the best school in the country. Oh, who teaches there? And big silence. I don't know. Well, how did you find out this was the best school in the country? Oh, my high school drama teacher went there. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't the best school in the country when your high school drama teacher was there, but that's been a while. So schools ebb and flow, people ebb and flow. So I think it's a little bit on both sides, but I think if we're talking about how we're failing as teachers, it is engagement, and it is staying current, and it is allowing students to fail. And I don't mean giving them an F. I mean allowing them to crash and burn and suffer through that play they're lighting and take the kind of hit from maybe that directing faculty member, and that's the most important show of his or her life, and his tenure's depending on it. Well, I'm not here to get tenure for him. I'm here to help someone learn how to design. It's a tricky kind of minefield at a university. No other place exists. It doesn't exist in the real world. It doesn't exist in commercial theater. We have a whole different set of problems, and training is not easy. So sometimes we fail by not telling someone you should leave SMU and you should go to Cal Arts, or you should leave Cal Arts and you should go to Carnegie Mellon, or you should leave Carnegie Mellon and go to the University of Tennessee. Help that student find the program that's right for them, given what they want to achieve, and partially what their skill set is and partially what their personality is and what we know those schools can deliver.
Mahmoud in Egypt wants to know, when is the last time you did something out there as a designer? Designers are like, what, 0.5% of the industry? So I can only answer for myself. In fact, I'm going through my website now, and I'm trying to get some lighting design pictures on there and going back to old stuff. So I'm going to have categories: old stuff, middle of the life stuff, and recent stuff, and finding all of that stuff right now. And with me, I'm doing I counted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects at the moment. None of them are stage lighting design. Okay, but they're all design projects, building spaces, and as the theater consultant. So I'm doing a recital hall in a community college. I'm doing a fine arts building at the University of Tampa. I'm doing a historic restoration of a 1936 venue in Panama City. I'm doing research with the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital Foundation, which you've heard about before. We just got a meeting coming up next week for the Jewish Federation of Sarasota, which is going to do a multi-purpose venue, and we're doing a large church down in the Villages here in Florida. So all of that keeps me current, and all of my students will hear all about those processes. Stage lighting, it's been a while, right, since I thought I had a show this year. That one's not going to happen. So I'm in Gainesville. I'm not in Dallas or LA, so it's different for these guys. So it just depends. But I do wherever I am, somehow creative work finds me, and I haven't stopped doing that. And I don't know, I'm thinking now that when I retire, I'm going to probably become a full-time consultant, and that will keep my creative juices flowing.
Well, for me out there, I'm doing a new play right now, and the playwright has given me my marching orders, and he has said, let's explore acid colors. And so I've got to come up with an acid color palette. And he said, I really want you to explore single point source. So acid colors and single point source.
That sounds like fun.
I'm working on that right now.
I'm kind of constantly working. I just opened a couple of shows a few weeks ago in Central City, and I'm coming up on a show in, actually it's a remount of My Fair Lady in Palermo. The big project, though, that I'm working on, it's not going to be produced for another year and a half, is a new musical based on Chernobyl. Chernobyl the musical. And it's actually it's like a musical opera piece, music theater, and it's going to open in Helsinki in 2021, I believe in March, and then move to LA. So the last time I opened the show was a week and a half ago. So there you go.
So there you go, Mom. We're all working, man. We're all still working somehow. We get up in the morning, even at our age, and we keep rolling.
It's amazing.
You are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers, and Light Talk this week is sponsored by.
Hey, how many times have you run out of room on the truss? The average moving light hangs on about a 2-foot center. But you need to hang just one more mover. What to do, kittens? From way up in the Texas Panhandle, Total Bastard Products is proud to introduce the tapeworm. Who is to say what an inch really is? Who is to say what a foot is? The tapeworm reduces the old-fashioned 12-inch foot to the newly improved space-saving 10-inch foot. Never run out of space again. Unlike your father's Stanley tape measure, the tapeworm is not held hostage to outdated, backward-thinking marks of measurement. Now, instead of, say, 20 movers on your 40-foot truss, you could hang 24. Think of the possibilities. The tapeworm is also the answer the technical director has been looking for. Under the old imperial system, you were always running out of room. Your proscenium was not wide enough. Perhaps your grid was not tall enough, or maybe that road box was just a little too wide to fit the stage door. No more 2-truck tours for you, my friend. With the tapeworm, it all fits in one bobtail. But wait, there's more. Not happy with your current hanging hardware and clamps? Act now and we'll throw in the hookworm. It never lets go. The tapeworm and the hookworm. Available at LDI this November. Just look for our booth near the food court.
Absolutely. How
do you know you're getting genuine Total Bastard products? Just look for the caveman holding a roll of gel on the label. If you want metric, they have the inchworm also.
Oh, yes, of course.
Of course. I never figured out why they just don't make maps in true scale. You just open the map, and next thing you know, you're there.
Oh, fantastic. That we need.
And now, back to Light Talk.
So those ducks in the background tell us that once again it's time for our ever-popular segment, Let's Talk About. And today, we're going to talk about Woodstock. 50 years ago, a generation-defining event happened in the little town of Bethel, New York, on Max Yasgur's dairy farm. Yes, It was Woodstock. Woodstock was not only a defining moment in American culture and music, it was also a defining moment in stage lighting history. And we can attribute that to E.H. Bradsford, also known as Chip Monck, for creating this historic lighting moment. Chip Monck was truly a pioneer of rock and roll lighting. Monk's career had taken him all over the world with some of the biggest names in the entertainment business. Altogether, he's worked on tours, special events, more than 300 artists, the Summer Olympics, prize fighting exhibitions, television, nightclubs. He's been the production designer for several Rolling Stones tours. He's designed Broadway shows and is a Tony Award nominee. At the time of Woodstock, Chip had already made his name by designing the Newport Jazz and Monterey Pop Festivals. Hired by Woodstock producer Michael Lang to be the production designer and lighting designer of the festival, his fee was a whopping $7,000.
Hey, not so bad for 1969.
Not so bad, but this guy earned it. He actually, he worked on it for months, and they had to go through several different site locations, and he designed the staging, he designed the lighting, the whole bit. As a matter of fact, they finally secured Max Yasgar's farm 29 days before the festival. So they had to put it all together in that short amount of time, which was really a feat. Chip and the crew assembled 4 lighting towers, 40 feet high by 8 feet by 16 feet. When the stage roof structure went up, they realized that it was not stable enough to hold all the lighting gear, so tons of lights were never hung. There were 2 towers front of house and 2 for side light. They were sort of like almost an extreme box boom angle, almost like a pit boom angle.
More like a lightning rod.
Lightning rod. Yeah, you had that problem too. There's no doubt about that. There were 4 Super Troopers on each front of house tower and 2 Super Troopers on each side tower. And he lit the entire festival with those 12 fixtures.
Well, I just got to say that I listened to that album. I don't make up the lie that a lot of people do that say they were at Woodstock, because if everybody who said they were at Woodstock that were really at Woodstock, they would have never fit. So I wasn't there, but I sure wanted to be. Of course, the music is the prime attraction, and the music is phenomenal. We're going to talk about our favorites. But what was kind of interesting is that I didn't know that Chip Monck was also I didn't even know he was the light designer. I wasn't into that back then. And I didn't know he was the MC. So there were these little quips that you'd hear on the album that me and my friends would sort of commit to memory. And then we would randomly say them when we were, let's say, utilizing substances that might have been available at Woodstock, and we would just shout out these lines and just crack ourselves up. So
before you say the lines, I just want to give a little background on how that happened, because it wasn't until the day that the festival was opening, right, that Michael Lang went up to Chip and said, "I screwed up. I forgot to hire an MC. So would you do it?" And Chip thought, he said, "What the hell?" He goes, "I'm not working during the daytime anyway. There's no lighting in the daytime, so it'll keep me busy during the day."
But he had this really classic voice, because I haven't listened to the album in years, and now that it's the 50th anniversary, I'm going to have to put it on tonight. But I can sort of hear him saying in this really raspy, sensuous voice, things like, "Don't eat the brown acid. The brown acid that is circulating, please do not eat it." That kind of thing. Or things like, "Your diabetes medicine is in the first aid tent."
Yeah, right.
Or "The rain's coming, try and protect yourself, cover up everyone, let's ride this out," because boy, they had some storms. And I really remember this one. "Please stay away from the towers. That is very dangerous. Please stay away from the scaffolds. There's electrical wiring," and other things that, like our friend Josh White's, screen getting blown down, right?
Yeah, Josh was actually going to do a light show there, but they ran into some problems, typical of Woodstock, right? They set up a 40 by 80 foot rear projection screen that looked fantastic, but they had to slash the screen to allow some of the wind to go through, because it acted as a giant sail and was going to basically lift up the entire stage and take it into the next county. So they set it up. They had this state-of-the-art IDA 4 video projector. He said it was bigger than a refrigerator, delivered less than 600 ANSI lumens, and needed a physicist to run it. He said, however, it looked fantastic. So they walked back into the crowd. They took a look at it, with the video on the RP screen. He said it looked like a postage stamp, but they were pretty happy with the way it looked. So they went back to the motel, And then they came back into the festival area the next day, and the screen was gone. They were saying, "Where's the screen?" They said, "Oh, we don't know. The wind blew it away." Well, they were very upset, obviously. The screen was gone. Their job was over, so they packed up their equipment and they went home. About a year later, when the movie came out, Josh was watching the film, and in the film, you actually see the guys tear the screen down during the rainstorm and cover equipment with it. So that's what happened to the Joshua Light Show at Woodstock.
Listen to this announcement. So, for example, security, if you be so helpful and know anyone who knows anything about a carbon arc and or follow spots, can you tap them on the shoulder and ask them if they would please come to gate 4? Because they were like looking for follow spot, because people were like up on the top of these towers in the rain and were giving up.
Yeah, they gave up. I mean, apparently there was a defection of follow spot operators. So
people wanted to be high and go have some, amore with their girlfriend, or drink something. I mean, but you know what? It sounds romantic, but if you really talk to people who were there, it was a mess.
Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. But when you watch the movie, and I think the movie was filmed in 16 millimeter, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's not super high quality, but they've cleaned it up since. Actually, the lighting is pretty damn good. I mean, you think he did this with 12 Super Troopers.
Well, I'm guessing they were working on generators, Steve, don't you think, back then?
Yes, generators have been around a long time, so I'm sure, I don't really know what they did, but I'm assuming they had generators there. It was a farm in the middle of a field.
Chip's final words of the festival, Stan's talking about his announcements, but his goodbye words were good wishes, good day, and a good life. And I think that's a lovely way to end the festival. Chip went on to have an amazing career. He designed many tours, even the opening and closing ceremonies of the 1984 Olympics. In 2003, Monck received the Parnelli Award for Lifetime Achievement in the Concert Touring Industry. So, Steve, why don't you tell us about the changes in rock and roll lighting since, this day 50 years ago in the mud of Woodstock?
Well, I mean, a lot of people saw opportunity. They started looking at the festivals that were happening from, really from 54 with Monterey all the way to Woodstock in 69, I guess it was. Kind of for a while, the center of the universe for rock and roll was actually Knoxville, Tennessee. Holiday on Ice was based there. Big touring show. It'll eventually be bought by Disney and turn into the kind of ice shows we know today. But for years in the 50s and 60s, that was home base for production and training and things like that. So in Knoxville, this small little mountain town, you had Terry Productions. So Terry Productions comes along, Jim and Ann Coatney, and they figure out, they're one of the first people to figure out how to do a stage. How to do a portable stage and a portable top that's not going to fall down in the rain and is also going to hold equipment up. So you have Terry Productions there doing that. They also are innovative in developing box trusses. Up in St. Louis, you had Video Technolights. Video Technolights came out with that first steel box truss. Terry took that idea and turned it into an aluminum truss. Knoxville Scenic Studios were there. Mountain Sound was there. Bandit Lights was there. Avo America's there now. So it's still kind of a mecca. They start looking at how to tour things, and that really, I think that begins in many ways in Knoxville. The other kind of really big innovator was Jim Brannon. Jim Brannon, is kind of a lost name if you don't know rock and roll and don't know rigging, but he's still very much alive and still very much kicking. In 1977, he started looking at how you could take lights on the road and how you could put them in the air. Before Brannon, most people were using a Vermet lift, which if you don't know what that is, it's a little crank-up lift. It looks a little bit like a forklift. It's meant to go about 8 or 9 feet high. It was used in the roofing industry to put the roof tiles on and crank it up to your roof. People are using Vermet lifts. They're putting a different mast on it to get it up to about 18 feet. They're using Genie Super Towers, things like that, but they're really cluttering the floor with these lifts that also aren't terribly safe. What Jim Brannon does is his first tour is with Jethro Tull. And they wanted it as clean as possible. They wanted everything up in the air. And he started exploring CM Lodestar. And at the time, the way that CM Lodestar worked was you would take a Lodestar motor. It's originally meant to be a chain hoist. It's used in factories and warehouses. They put them on trolleys so they can move heavy equipment around. The problem with the Lodestar is, as it was intended to be used, the motor is hung up in the air and the chain comes down. That's a lot of weight to pull up if you're a rigger. I mean, you're trying to dead pull that whole motor up. He looks at it and says, let's invert it. Let's send the chain up and keep the motor down. Now, at first glance, you think, well, any fool could figure that out. What Jim Brannon figured out was actually how to do it. And he figured out you had to rebuild the interior of the Lodestar motor. If you just flip it over, the points fall out, so your motor stops working. He figured out the way to invert it. He re-engineered how different components went into it. And now if you go to the CM Lodestar site, you see the CM Lodestar Classic. It is that motor that's meant to be inverted and crawl up the chain. So there's a lot going on. I mean, that's just small stuff. Showco. Showco is a monster company of that period. Mm-hmm. Showco is a little Dallas-based organization. Jack and Rusty were working in a band together. They had formed a Texas-based blues band. They didn't have the best band in the world, but they really understood how to put a sound system together. Yeah. So they built a sound system for their band, and really what happens is everybody in the world wants their sound system. Right. I just saw a little list of Showco here that's worth mentioning. We forget how monster some of these companies are and what they did for the industry. But Showco at one time was doing Jesus Christ Superstar, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Lee Michaels, Grand Funk Railroad, The Osmonds, Rare Earth, Cat Stevens, David Cassidy, Little Feat, The Band, Wishbone Ash, Genesis. About another 20 names here. If I just kind of randomly pick people, ZZ Top, The Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney. I mean, they were a monster company. Showco is now owned by Clare Brothers. But in 1970, they had a huge decision to make. Were they going to update all their sound equipment, which was getting a little long in the tooth, or were they going to go into this new world? And they went into this new world of moving lights. We've talked a lot about that. But they develop a moving light. They develop something that can change color. They develop a console. Everything changes. We think about, 1969 with Chipmunk and his 12 follow spots. I mean, it's barely 20 years later, 79, 80, about 12 years later, actually, that we have now moved into a whole nother generation of lighting, kind of advanced by people like Verilight and Morpheus and Lightwave Research.
Yeah, we went from thousands of Parcans to moving lights and and fewer generators. Speaking of generators, but we also came into IMAG. Back then, because I used to go to a lot of these concerts back then, and a few of these festivals. And if you weren't within the first 100 or 200 feet, you really couldn't see anything. Well, when they brought outdoor video into these festivals, they were able to project the image of the rock and roll artists to people way beyond 100, 200 feet. So IMAG changed everything as well. I mean, the whole experience went from a mostly musical to a musical and visual experience.
Well, again, this lighting technology update in the late 60s, early 70s, and I'm not dogging anybody here. This was just what it was. I went to see a Carpenters concert, and they had Vermet lifts. The trussing was television aerial towers, Roan Tower. Mm-hmm. And on that Roan Tower, believe it or not, there were not Parcans or Lecos or beam projectors. There were R40 floodlights,
right,
like you would see on the garage outside. And the electrical cable was TW wire. It's that flat wire that carpenters use, electricians use inside your house. And looking back on that, today we would look at that and think, good heavens, what are they doing? But I remember at the time thinking, it's kind of neat. I see different colored light bulbs up there. Follow spots were doing the heavy lifting of the show, but they had created an environment.
Yep.
And in a few short years, that has moved into moving light technology, which has moved into LED technology, which is who knows where we're going in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an Alice Cooper concert in 1971 where he had just the R40 strip lights for footlights with the guy playing them like a color organ. And to me, that was amazing. So it's not necessarily the equipment that you have. It's obviously how you use it. But boy, you are right. I mean, things have changed dramatically. So, guys, getting back to Woodstock, what were your favorite performances?
Okay, so the song that really got me going was Canned Heat, Going Up the Country. That was the first song. The guitar riffs got me all pumped up. I get in the car, turn that on, and all I wanted to do was drive out of the city to the country. And I did. And I did a lot of time upstate New York. The other ones would be Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, of course, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, that rendition when they were scared shitless.
It was their second gig in front of people.
Of course, Carlos Santana and Jimi Hendrix doing the Star Spangled Banner at the end was definitely a favorite of mine.
Steve?
Oh, I'm going to go Friday. I'm going to go with Richie Havens.
Yeah.
Richie Havens did a 10-song set with Freedom, and it was an improv.
Yeah.
So I would say Richie Havens.
Yeah.
On that second day, I'm going to go with The Who, because The Who had been touring solidly, and they had just come off and done Circus with the Rolling Stones, and they were right back on tour. So I think The Who was at the top of their game by the time they hit Woodstock. Also, Creedence Clearwater. And we forget Creedence Clearwater was there. They went up really late on Saturday night, and then and for some reason, for some reason they didn't record them for the album or for the film.
Yeah,
I just read a little note saying that their 11-song set has been or is about to be released. And I think on Sunday, Sunday wasn't that exciting for me, but I think Sunday you have to go with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, Hendrix was great. But yeah, I loved Country Joe and the Fish, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Joe Cocker. I think Santana's performance of Soul Sacrifice was unbelievable to this day, with Greg Rowley's great organ solo. Of course, being a Hammond player, I have to say that. And I agree with Steve. The Who really hit it out of the park. I've seen Hendrix before. I think Hendrix played a lot better in other shows. But again, the Star Spangled Banner is such an iconic moment that it has to be mentioned. And I just want to say that Rhino Records has just come out with a box set, a 50th anniversary of Woodstock, that if you haven't heard it and you haven't seen the movie or whatever, it's all been, of course, it's been redigitized, remixed. And apparently it sounds fantastic. So I'm going to plug Rhino's box set right here at the end. I think there's a great quote by Graham Nash, who said, "We really haven't changed that much in all these years. We still believe that love is much better than hate, and that
peace is better than war."
So let's keep that in mind. All right, Steve has our last question of the day.
It's Elizabeth in the UK, and she writes, "I will be attending LDI this November and would like to attend your podcast session on Saturday. I don't really have a good lighting question, but let's talk swag."
First of all, I'm going to tell Elizabeth, if you want to attend the podcast session, take a $20 bill and write your name on the back of it and send it to Light Talk Central. And we'll make sure you'll have a seat there.
I have a story about this. Can I jump on this one? Yesterday or 2 days ago, I got a private text message from somebody at a company who was here in Gainesville and did a training for our students and said, "Hey, Stan, I think I left my Light Talk sticker in Florida when I was there. And do you have any more?" And I said, "I think I have a few. And if I've got them, I'll put them in I'll put it in an envelope." And lo and behold, I had and I said, "They're getting rare because I think most of us, or David made a bunch of them, and I gave each of us some
collector's items. Yeah,
I don't know how many are left. So they're sort of and I'm thinking, I don't know if we should make more and let them become rare.
I saw one on eBay.
I saw it on eBay too.
$700.
But anyway, we should talk about some swag, more stickers. No.
Yeah, no. The problem is that Stan had some serious issues getting the swag through customs when he was coming back to the United States a month ago. So we are actually working on a plan B. Now, plan B, what it is, we don't know yet. I suggested a weekend kit for Vegas, but I don't think my brothers like that idea.
I think our swag is legal and available in Nevada now.
Ooh, you're absolutely right.
And it doesn't stay in Vegas, does it?
No, it doesn't stay in Vegas. But the good news is that we really only have two requirements to attend our session. One is that you are breathing, and the second is that you laugh at our jokes. So, anyway, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second or nanosecond of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
But if you choose to litigate, our law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and deep in the heart of Texas.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss designing rep plots for thrust theaters, what is the best way to secure your crescent wrench, heads, and what is so great about the Neo.
All of that and a new sponsor. Light Talk is broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we will see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Adios, and a